Hey everyone, welcome. It is Caleb. In this episode, we're going to take a look at building a documentation website. Now, this is going to use Markdown, and this is a tool that allows you to describe the structure of pages, and it'll all ultimately get turned into HTML. This is going to be done with React, but the majority of heavy lifting is going to be done with a tool known as Docusaurus. So Docusaurus is a tool built by Facebook, and when you create your site, it's going to look a lot like this. So their documentation was built with Docusaurus. So you're going to have pages that are built with Markdown, and the next video we're going to have a Markdown detailed tutorial, and this page can have different sections on the right hand side, which each has links of their own. And then on the left hand side, you have different chapters, which you can expand and click and get more information. Now, this tool is pretty awesome. The fact that it uses Markdown is great because it's really easy to edit, even if you're not super technical. So you can go in, you can scroll down to the bottom, and you can see this edit this page button. And this will allow you to find that page in GitHub. Now, immediately it says I don't have the permissions to edit it directly, and I can fork the repository if I want. But if I just want to see what the code looks like, I can go into the URL, replace edit here with blob, and that's going to take me to this page in the open source documentation here. And then if I want to see what this actually looks like, because right now it's being rendered, you can click this raw. So this is what was actually written out to generate that page. So if you're not really familiar with Markdown, it's no worries, you can get the majority of things accomplished with a few basic commands, which I'll be showing you. But the thing here is that it doesn't tightly couple the code and the content. It separates those out. So we have the code that generates the website, and then you have the content, which is all Markdown. So it's really clean and easy to use. So how do we even get started with this? Well, we're going to use NPX, which is a tool that comes with NPM. So go ahead and download Node.js, which will include NPM. So now we are in a terminal, and I'm just in a CS directory where I put all my code. And you can say which NPX. So if you get something like this, that means you have NPX installed. If not, you'll want to say npm install npx. That'll go through the installation, and then you should be able to use npx. Npx is used to generate a site. So what we will do is we will say npx create Docusaurus at latest, like this here. And then we will give it a name. We'll just call it notes. And then a theme, we'll just go with classic. So hit enter. Now eventually it'll say happy building awesome websites. So we have that installed. We'll change directory into notes. And here's a list of some of the commands we can use. Now you'll probably want to do your editing from an editor. So go ahead and open an editor such as Visual Studio Code. And then you can go to File, Open Folder to open that new folder you created. And here is a preview of the content included. You can also open a terminal from here directly. So this will bring you to that notes directory, so you can issue the same commands here and have everything in one location. So first thing, npm start. Once that's done, you should be able to go to your browser and visit localhost 3000, and this will bring you to your new website. It says my site, Docusaurus, dinosaurs are cool, and it'll bring you also to a Docusaurus tutorial, which is all localhost. So you already have a basic setup here. It has dark mode set up already, and overall it looks pretty good. So now all you really need to do is just edit the content of these different sections to match whatever you're trying to document. Maybe you're writing a book. Maybe you're trying to document some new technology. Whatever it might be, it's pretty simple. You already have the entire site structure. But let's go ahead and take a look back at some of the code. And there's a few important things. First, I'll show you the actual documents, which are in docs, and then the different folders. So tutorial basics, tutorial extras, those coordinate to these sections right here. So folders show up here, and then individual files such as intro.md. This is the page you look at when you click tutorial intro. So this is what is generated from this Markdown file. So quick basics. A single £sign here will be the main title and what shows up on the side. So we have tutorial intro. Scrolling over, you can see tutorial intro, and that's real big here. These smaller headers are made with 2 pound signs with a space afterwards right there. That's how you can make the different sections. You can do the different code blocks with these 3 backticks. And here is an example of creating a link. So try Docusaurus immediately with, and that shows up here, try Docusaurus immediately with docusaurus.new. Now there is also this blog tab here, which allows you to obviously write blogs. So that's going to be over in the blog sections with the different posts. So this can be used if you want a blog, but it's not required. So there's a lot of different customization you can do. Personally, I got into Docusaurus because I just wanted the documentation. I didn't want to build an entire website, but some people do build an entire website using Docusaurus. So that's all you need to know to actually get the basics set up. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about some configuration. So you can see your configuration from docusaurus.config.js. And there's a lot of different stuff in here. And this will describe various things about your site. So first, your site title, the tagline, URL, and also your project name and organization name, which is usually tied to your GitHub username and your repo name. Now scrolling through here, you have some navigation. So we have your site logo and then tutorial and blog. So that's what shows up here. So you can edit this image and the words that show up here, as well as change these, add or remove anything. So that is how you do that. So each one of these sections refers to one of those links. So this is the blog section. This is the tutorial section. And then this here is actually on the right side. You can see position right. So that shows up on this section over here. So as an example, what you could do is you could take this, copy it, paste it, and you could create a new link. So for example, you could say Discord, and you could change it to your Discord link, keep it on position right, and that'll show up over here now. Now you'll notice I didn't do any refreshing or anything for the site. Pretty much this will be watching for changes. Anytime you make a change and save, it refreshes the server and automatically changes the content on the web page, which is really handy for development if you want to break off one side being the web page and the other side being the code. Scrolling down, you'll see similar things for the footer, Stack Overflow, Discord, and Twitter. So that shows up all the way at the bottom, Stack Overflow, Discord, and Twitter in these different sections, as well as a copyright with a generated date. So this will update after the new year automatically. So if you go back to the Docusaurus documentation, there is a section on docs only mode. And it talks about the structure of a newly generated site where you have /docs or /blog. So taking a look at our site, if you go to tutorial and go into one of these sections, you have /docs and then the name of that section. This is fine, like it's not really the end of the world, but let's say you have some other website, and let's say your website is mywebsite.com, and you put this at docs.mywebsite.com. Well, now you have docs.mywebsite.com/docs, which in my opinion is a little redundant, a little sloppy. So if you're going to dedicate a subdomain to your documentation, then I'd get rid of the blog and get rid of this docs section. So then it would just be like this. And that's exactly what this section is talking about for this docs only mode. And it shows what your configuration currently looks like and how you can make that change where your base path is just a slash and you turn blog to false. And that's optional. You don't have to disable the blog, but I'm not going to be using the blog anyways. So let's take a look at our config, and we'll add a route base path and make it a /. So that's going to be at the very top of the file, and you're going to look for this classic docs. So route base path : /, and then a comma after. Save. Now to disable the blog, what we can do is we can just say blog is false, and then follow that up with a comma. Now, obviously, we have blog in here twice, so if you want, you can comment this section out, or you can remove it. All right, so that should fix the problem. Giving it a quick save. Let's check back on our website. So let's go ahead back to the My Site homepage, and we'll go into tutorial, and you can see it's now /intro. There's no docs before it. And we can go into any of those pages, and I just think it's a little bit cleaner. And the blog currently doesn't work. So we could actually just remove that blog link. So let's go over here, find blog, and you can remove or comment that out. Now going back, you can see it disappears. Next thing I wanted to show you is how to create the homepage. Now, because this is a site dedicated for documentation, I would think it'd be appropriate to just immediately go to the intro or maybe like a quick start guide. So I'm going to show you how to do that now. First, let's take a look at the existing homepage. So when we go to our homepage, we see my site, a couple links, and I just don't think we need this. So what we could do is we could actually make a certain tutorial be on the homepage, such as this one here. So to do that, what we can do is we can go into that page, intro.md, and we can say slug, and for this we just want a /. So this is the actual path to the file, and now we can check out the homepage. We're still getting the original homepage, so we can actually remove this file, and that is going to be in our files here under source, pages, index.js. We can just go ahead, right click, and delete this. Or if you're just kind of learning, experimenting, you could rename it as well. So then you just have it as a backup. Now let's check back on our site. When we go to our homepage, you can see we now see the tutorial intro. So cool, we're making a lot of good progress. We basically now have a dedicated docs website, and we don't have a bunch of extra stuff we don't need. Now, one other thing I wanted to mention is how you can do some basic styling. So from our project, you can go into CSS, and you have custom.css, and this is where you define the color scheme for your website. Now, I'm not going to pretend like I know what I'm doing when it comes to CSS. Honestly, 90% of the time, I just change stuff until I get it to work, and then I just never touch it ever again. However, for you CSS freaks, you can do all this cool stuff here. You also notice that there are different sections for when you're in dark theme. So this will change the code highlighting for when the theme is dark. So an example change you could make, let me just copy paste this, is we'll just say body. And I'm just going to make some crazy colors just to test it out. Give that a quick save and check it out. Hey, that actually looks kind of cool. I'm impressed that my random color doesn't look too bad. And this will only happen when you're in that dark mode. Now, you can also just inspect and get a feel for how things are described in the HTML. So we grabbed body. There's also different IDs and classes. So the ID __ Docusaurus refers to everything as well. So you can go in here, find any class or ID that you want to customize, and then bring that over here in the CSS and edit it. But I'm going to bring that back to how it is. Honestly, I'm totally fine with the default theme. I think it looks pretty good, and I don't see any point in me editing it and just messing it up. So let's take a moment to talk about what you do with your website when you're actually done with it. So right now we have a local node server running, and this is still a dynamic website. But Docusaurus is known as a static site generator. So the end result should be static files. How do we actually get those static files? So pretty much we're going to issue another command, so we can close out of this with Control C, and we're going to say npm run build. When you do this, it's going to create a new directory, and you can see it appear right here, build. Now scrolling through here, you see there are some errors, and these are just broken links. So tutorial basics is linking to /docs /intro. So when you go through and you update all of the content, you're not going to have those same errors. So you can go into this build directory, and these are all the files for your website. So Markdown pages, index.html, And then in tutorial basics, you have an HTML file for each one of these different pages. So the end result is HTML. There's no server-side code here. So you can take all of these files and upload them to GitHub Pages or AWS S3. And we'll look into some of that in the upcoming episodes. So if you want to see how to deploy this to S3, then be sure to subscribe and stay tuned for upcoming episodes. Now, if you want to take these static files and test them locally and make sure everything is working good before you deploy them somewhere, there is a command where you can do that. So go back to the terminal and you're going to run npm run serve. So this is going to pretty much start that same server, but now using the build directory. So we can go to this URL, command click, and same exact thing, looks pretty good. The only difference now is any of these changes locally are not going to be rendered here. So for example, if we change this getting started, let's go over into docs intro.md and changed it to something else. Close enough there. Well, we save that. It's not going to show those changes here. If we wanted to see those changes, we would have to rerun npm build. So npm run build. It's going to go through that build process again, and it's going to replace the build directory with new built files. And now when we do a refresh, it says our updated stuff here. All right, so that's how you can see that. We'll go ahead and put that back to how it was, and we will rerun our build just to get it exactly how it was before we messed it up. Now, if you do end up checking this into source code, let's just say git init, you can see Docusaurus includes a git ignore, which will automatically ignore the build directory. So when we say git status, you will not see that build directory in these untracked files. So what we can do is we can just say git add dot to add everything, git commit -m initial commit. Inside of GitHub, we can create a new repository, and we'll just call this sample docs create repository. And I'm going to add this remote, so paste that here. We'll rename the branch to main if it's not already. And we will push to origin. So now if you want to see the code we have here, you can go to github.com/calebcurry/sample docs. You can see that here. All right, so that pretty much summarizes up how to use Docusaurus. Now I wanted to go through just a quick example of setting up a sample site, actually changing some of this information. So if you feel like you need a little bit more practice, you can follow along now. But we've pretty much covered the essentials, and you should be able to get your own site started. So let's go ahead, go through our configuration, update some links, get an actual site going. In the upcoming videos, we're going to be talking about, how Markdown works and go through some instructions on that. So let's go ahead and make this site designed to be kind of documentation for the different things you can do in Markdown. So we'll start in docusaurus.config, where we'll just go through and change some of this information. Markdown tutorial, tagline. This is always the hardest part. Get up to speed with Markdown. And for the URL, I'm not entirely sure because I haven't hosted this anywhere, so that I'll just leave it like that for now. Now for the favicon, you can find that in images. So go to static image and you'll see favicon.ico. So this is what shows up in that top tab. So if you want to design a new file, you can look up how to create a new favicon. Now for the organization, I'll say Caleb Curry, project name, sample docs. So I'm going to run this locally, so I'm going to close out of the npm run serve, and I'm going to say npm start. Now we should be able to see the Markdown tutorial up in the tab here, but now I want to actually configure this edit button so that it links to the proper GitHub location. Not entirely sure. I guess I'll just try replacing this with my name. And this will be sample docs, which is the repo name. Hovering over this, you can see that URL down in the bottom left. Click that. That didn't work. So I think we can set it up like this. Try edit this page. Aha, worked. Let's try another page. So we'll go over to one of these examples, edit this page, and that worked as well. So that is how you can set up the edit URL to the correct location. Just change this to your GitHub username, and then the repo name, and then tree and the branch. We'll change the navbar title to Markdown tutorial. I'm not going to deal with images for right now, so we'll just leave it at that. Change the GitHub to the correct location, Caleb Curry. Sample wiki, Caleb Curry. Oh, this is for the Discord. I don't actually have a public Discord, so I'm just going to remove that. Now for the community in the footer, I'm going to update that so we have my YouTube channel. I don't know, maybe my Instagram. And I guess Twitter too. All right, let's check that out, make sure these all work. So we got YouTube. Looks good. Instagram. And Twitter. Cool. I'm just going to get rid of that more section so we can just get this whole section. Delete it. Now it will look like this, where we just have these two sections. You might want to do some styling on that. It's fine for me, but so far so good. We need to update this tutorial link to actually be pointed to the right location. So scroll up to the docs right here, and we will get rid of this first /docs. Actually, I think we'll get rid of everything. It'll just be a /. And now tutorial should link to this page right here. So whenever you're like in any of these pages, you can get back to the first page by hitting tutorial. This link up here is kind of redundant because this will go to the same place. So I'm just going to get rid of that. There we go. Now let's go ahead and look at the docs. I'm actually just going to pretty much start fresh. I'll just delete these two folders. And then inside of intro.md, we'll just go through an example. You can make a code section. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Those are backticks right above the tab character. Just put some code in here and then you can label it Python to get some syntax highlighting. And we'll just delete all this stuff here. So let's discover Markdown. So there's a very basic web page teaching you how to work with Markdown. All you have to do is make a code section. Also, I missed the footer here where it says my project, so let's fix that real quick. So I'll change this to Caleb Curry. And I'm going to get rid of the Docusaurus mention here, so right there. And that should look good. There we go. So that is where we will end this tutorial. In the upcoming episode, we're going to actually talk about the different things you can do with Markdown, where we will be filling out some of that page with the different examples. So stay tuned for that video if you want a good guide on working with Markdown. To end this, we're going to add everything to our repo and commit it. So git add, git commit, simple example, git push origin main. All right, so you should be able to go to that repo if you want to clone it. So github.com, Caleb Curry /sample docs, and I'll bring you here.